You are watching the New American Media. Live from Los Angeles, California, in the United States. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Engelman. Welcome. Welcome back to our Agree to Disagree show. But it's also our The Unhappy Hour show. We're going to be talking with Blake the Eccentric Wally. Some sports, some Kansas City Chiefs, Bob Costas, Jason Whitlock, NRA Second Amendment stuff for our sports. And then we're going to kind of go through our top stories, if you will. We do radio shows throughout the week. We want to recap some interesting stuff going on today. Thanks for joining us here at thenewamericanmedia.com, part of the TNAM radio network. You are listening to a Twist of Nothing song. Sean Flynn and Johnny Rabb, great composers and drummers, musicians, just came in the other day. It's been about a year since Sean left us in a motorcycle crash. He was a big part of the show here. Johnny's a good friend of both of ours, and this song just came in the other day, so we're rocking it out a little bit. Two really cool drummers. So while they do their thing, we're going to talk about a few things. Bob Costas, the NRA, Jason Whitlock, school curriculums dropping interesting reading, George Zimmerman suing NBC, Detroit going bankrupt, a fiscal cliff, and more. But right now, just listen to this drum part. Song is called Metro. It's not done yet, but doing a lot of reflecting lately. I wanted to kind of get this new version out here. Special thanks to my brother Chris for mixing these versions together in this latest edit. We're just going to rock out the rest of this tune and get started with the show. There it is, Metro. It was going under the project name, something Twist of Nothing. Sean Flynn, Johnny Rabb, and my brother Chris Engelman helping immensely with the care of helping the project move forward in Sean's absence. So there it is, Metro. We'll post that out there somewhere permanently for you guys to check out. But as I was saying, we want to reach out to our good friend Blake Wally. I do radio shows with Blake on a weekly basis over at freedomizerradio.com. We'll get him into the program now. Talk a little Bob Costas. And then top stories blitz.
Hello.
Good morning, Blake. It's Brian, and you are live on the air, sir. How are you doing?
Excellent. How are you?
Living the dream, of course, but you already know that.
Right.
Yes. Well, I was briefly explaining to people that we do some radio shows over on your site. So if you would be so kind, would you be able to just kind of introduce yourself to everybody, kind of let them know how they can find you? And then we'll kind of start digging into, first, the Bob Costas story that has me so contemplative. It's a very dynamic story. And then we'll get into kind of a top stories of the week type segment.
Sure, sounds good, Brian. Yes, I am Blake Wally, or Blake the Eccentric. I'm a fellow radio host, blogger, activist, and yes, I have a website over at eccentricperspective.com, and I have a radio show by the same name, Eccentric Perspective, which can be found on iTunes. And yes, Brian co-hosts with me every Monday and sometimes a Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, we bounce around. We do different formats, and we tend to talk a little out-of-the-box politics over on your side. We certainly do that here, don't get me wrong. But this one I kind of want to file it under the category of the unhappy hour. This is a sports story, and then it clearly blurs the lines into politics and civil liberties and what the Founding Fathers' intention was. Of course, Blake, I'm talking about the Bob Costas story. Can you give us the general overview? We've already kind of heard at least something about it by this point. I've heard tons about it, and a lot of good conversation has been sparked from it. But can you kind of reset it and give us the overview of what's going on with Bob Costas and the Kansas City Chiefs and why people are so on edge about the conversation right now?
Well, there was a horrible tragedy last Saturday, but at the Kansas City Chiefs practice, is it a practice facility, I guess? And that
I
he
believe
ends up
so.
shooting his girlfriend at home, runs over to this facility, and shoots himself after some bizarre, confrontation. So anyway, the next day, we get through the football, and we're on the late night, I guess the Sunday night game for NBC when Bob Costas, of all people, decides to, give his take on the. But what the thing was that he was, if you look at the video, you can clearly see he's reading off of a teleprompter this little message, and he kind of goes after the, the gun culture, as it will, and set off a little bit of a media firestorm. So dividing the people who are, on which side of the fence you're on the gun control issue. So, it was interesting dialogue that was taking place throughout America this week.
Well, there were some interesting components to the conversation because there's so many different angles that people have a strong opinion on. I, on one hand, I love the fact that he went there. I love that he addressed it and went for it. I wasn't a fan of what he said. I think from your camp, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from some of our previous conversations, you not only didn't love the content of where he was going with some of this stuff, such as where we both agree where it was ridiculous to say that all I know is if there wasn't a gun, they'd both be alive. That is nonsense. We both agree on that, I believe, but I think you were also annoyed that he went there during football time and kind of blurred that line. I love that he did that. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know what? You do bring up a good point on that. I guess I've said, these guys maybe they shouldn't be spouting their mouth off on some of these controversial issues, and they just stick to the bread and circus, as it will. Just cover that, and let's not blur the line of entertainment and complicated political and philosophical issues, which is what he did. But yeah, you also bring up a very good point, and if you're going to say something, that's cool. Let's bring it up for discussion. So as long as you can take the heat and the criticism for what you said, and yeah, so it's been a good healthy dialogue of sorts. I don't know if we've really seen a great debate on it.
Not a great debate, but I like that he went on Bill O'Reilly. Did you have a chance to catch that interview where Bob Costas?
What? I did, but I got to say I was disappointed. And usually Bill O'Reilly can be they have their I'm not a Fox News guy, and I like to criticize O'Reilly and Hannity, but I will also give them credit sometimes when they do interviews, they do a pretty good job of bringing up the issues and attacking the other side. They seem to really focus. Out of all the things that they could have focused on, I was disappointed that Bill O'Reilly chose to go after the whole Batman shooting thing. I thought that was a really bad angle of the gun control argument. My idea of having a good gun control argument is maybe talking about how come, the places with the strictest gun laws have the highest gun crimes, and that's Chicago, New York, L.A., instead they chose to focus on this idea that if they were armed at the movie theater in Colorado, that somehow they would have, Bill O'Reilly would have been the hero, and I forget who did they go Dirty Harry on him or something like that? I can't remember which analogy they pulled out, but yeah, like he was gonna save the day, amidst the tear gas and a body armor wearing crazy man with a heavy machine gun.
Well, I agree with you there. I'll say that I agree with you there. That was not the argument I wanted to have. Where he said, "This is where you have it wrong, Costas." He's having fun with him. He's kind of gentle ribbing. He's being out there. The fact that he's kind of just messing with him and going a little out there, but that's not the strongest point. But I will say from having went outside my front door one day to screams because 3 loose pit bulls were killing things in my front yard, and then they chased me into the next building, and for an hour and 45 minutes, animal control would not come out despite the fact I kept making phone calls to 911. I like his point because it's up to us to defend ourselves at all times. Police clean crime scenes. They rarely prevent a problem. It's up to you you're the first line of defense. Whether it's pit bulls in your front yard or some guy in your movie theater goes nuts, if you're packing, you at least have a chance. And I think that's kind of speaks a little bit more to the culture in general, where do we expect to be taken care of, or are we demanding, like our forefathers did, in the revolutionary days, that we have the right to take care of ourselves? And any attempts, like you said, the places that have the highest gun control laws have the highest crimes, because criminals always get the guns. You look at Chicago, you look at Washington, D.C., you can go down the list of places where things are not going so well, and that those are a lot of the places where the citizens aren't able to protect themselves, despite the fact that we have a clear Second Amendment saying that we have the right to keep and bear arms. We don't have the right to go murder, but we have the right to defend ourselves. And it's an interesting spot because now you have NBC trying to come out there, despite the fact that they send all of their reporters in MSNBC to the White House, despite the fact that NBC is getting sued by George Zimmerman for doctoring tapes to make it look like gun control or having the right to defend yourself with a gun is a bad thing. You really have to question the motivation behind NBC when you have Eric Holder at the top of the Obama administration, who's on record saying we need to brainwash people into thinking that guns are bad, just like the way we did with cigarettes. If NBC and MSNBC are just an arm of the Democratic Party in the Obama administration,
and CNBC, yeah.
and CNBC squared, and CNBC 3,
and they're softball, economic news, yeah.
Well, you look at it, you put 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, and it's like, wait, I'm developing a theory here. I think NBC and the administration are trying to make guns and people who defend themselves look bad. What are your thoughts?
I 100% agree. Yes, it's really interesting. Yeah, when we put all that stuff together, NBC and MSNBC and CNBC, and you see a pattern. Now, I don't actually know if CNBC talks a lot about gun control. It's just the idea that, are they really trying to inform people and give you some hard-hitting news and get to the truth, or are they possibly pushing propaganda? And yeah, we were talking about that a few days ago because some of the 3 of the NBC big-time anchors were, or pundits, whatever you want to call them, were meeting at the White House. So, yeah, how do you have objective news when you're hanging out with your rubbing shoulders with the president?
Absolutely. And, there was another point that you were making in some of our shows, and you and I were talking off air about this as well, that Tony Dungy was kind of making the rounds, and he was asked about it, and he said he was kind of alarmed by the gun culture, where 3 out of 4 people in his locker room have a gun. And I'm like, my thoughts reading that is, what's wrong with that 1 out of 4 people? Why wouldn't they want to defend themselves? It's really our duty as an American to take care of ourselves. Otherwise, we can become a burden on other people, let alone if you're just sitting around waiting for someone to help you after Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, or a financial collapse, or, there's only so much help you can expect anyone else to give you if you're not able to take care of yourself. And it just struck me, who the heck are the 1 out of 4 people in Tony Dungy's locker room that don't want to protect themselves and their family or protect their government from invasion or collapse? I don't know. Am I unique in that, or?
Well, yeah, I guess the argument is in that you get into that kind of culture, and you're, a lot of the argument I've been seeing recently is about the whole the Sean Taylor tragedy, and it's haves and have-nots, and if you're a young man and you got that big football contract, and you might want to go hanging out at the clubs with your fellow NFL players, or you're putting yourself in a sort of danger when people find out they know you have money and you're flashing around, and you can set yourself up for potential. You set yourself up as a target, and it's only natural to want to defend yourself, I would think, or to have other people with you that might be able to protect you.
Well, let's go one more step here, because we can continue this gun debate. There's no debate. Let me rephrase that.
They jump to conclusions on this.
Yeah.
They don't know exactly what happened with this. They don't know if this guy was on Prozac or had too many concussions. And to suggest that this wouldn't have happened if he didn't have a gun is just absolutely ridiculous. If you've lost your mind and you're going to murder someone, you're probably not going to calm down when you realize, I guess I can't kill this person because I don't have a gun. It just, it simplifies the process. But jumping to that conclusion, it was really a terrible mistake on Bob Costas' part. But then again, he read a teleprompter. So what was it? Was it his fault? Did he openly want to do that, or did NBC at the top, try to sneak that in there, tell him to say that? I have no idea. That brings up a lot of other questions, too.
Well, he's on the O'Reilly interview, at least. I've seen him out there. He's definitely defending those positions, whether he's been told to defend those positions or he was told to do it and he actually believes it, or he was told to do it, or he pushed the producers to make sure he could get that in there. I'm a little unclear exactly of the motivation there and where that line might be blurred, but this goes a different place, because we can talk Second Amendment and guns all the time, and we can come back to this a little bit later. But I want to wrap this particular story up, because I want to get to this little segment. We'll do top stories with Brian and Blake in just a second here. But you got this Jason Whitlock guy. He's out here saying a few different things, and this is where you really start to go a little out into left field. Let's just leave it at that. Jason Whitlock says, sports gets so much attention and people tune out the real world. And then I try to take advantage of the opportunity to talk about the real world when sports lends itself to that and try to open people's eyes. Okay, fair enough, Whitlock said. I did not go as far as I'd like to go because my thoughts on the NRA and America's gun culture. I believe the NRA is the new KKK, and that the arming of so many black youths and loading up our community with drugs and then just having an open shooting gallery is the work of people who obviously don't have our best interests at heart or in mind, whatever. So
yeah, unbelievable that he would bring up something like that. That was just really foolish, and it ended up really backfiring on him bad. But he's got to just take a very easy look at history. And I don't know if you want me to jump to that.
Yes.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Jason Whitlock is a black man, and he make those comments, and you're combining the NRA with the KKK, but here's the thing. Back in the day, the people that were lobbying for the gun laws, from everything I understand, were the KKK, and the whole reason is because after slavery was abolished, they didn't want the black man. They didn't want these slaves that have been, exploited and taken advantage of for, generations, perhaps, getting guns because slaves are not allowed to own guns. They didn't want retaliation. They didn't want to be antagonized by these people. And yeah, you could only imagine. It's not too difficult to piece that together. So it was really a foolish and stupid statement by Whitlock. And that's why the forefathers put that amendment in there for a reason. Yes, slaves don't own guns. That's why every dictator throughout history always wants to disarm the population because they can't overthrow them. So that was getting into some very dangerous territory. So very foolish on his part.
Well, it goes. I heard an interview that was interesting about Ulysses S. Grant, former president, became the president of the NRA. And I'm still doing some research into this, so don't hold me to this. But the conversation I heard was that Ulysses S. Grant was one of the people that pushed hard to destroy the KKK as president, and then after being president became the president of the NRA. Because at the end of the day, and I know that's one of those phrases you're not supposed to say, which is why I've caught myself saying it twice, but you have a situation now where the Second Amendment is there to protect everybody, especially those most vulnerable, elderly, that aren't physically strong, maybe younger people, girls, anyone that's not physically strong, the weak,
right.
the disenfranchised, the former slaves. Imagine that being property of somehow being a slave, and then you have the right now to defend yourself. You have a Second Amendment right to make sure nobody ever does that to you again.
Yeah, would armed people want to be? Would armed people be slaves? That's an interesting question, and the obvious answer is no.
I have a little plaque, a little engraving from the NRA. I'm a lifetime member. And it's a quote from George Washington. It says, "A free people ought to be armed." And that was what they fought a war for, was to make sure nobody comes in here and starts doing that crap again, and that we have a chance to be on equal footing with any king, with any quote-unquote leader or ruler or master. And that's kind of what things are coming to these days with all of the indebtedness where, you cannot be free when you're in debt. When you owe, you're either a creditor or a debtor. And if you're a debtor, how free are you really if you're not sovereign over your own life, because you're constantly on the hamster wheel of got to make money, got to make money, got to make money, got to make money. So, I mean, it opens up a whole new bag of questions as well.
Right. And, it was a foolish comment. I was not always a big Second Amendment person historically. I'm not part of the NRA, but I do understand the reason for the Second Amendment, and that's something that that cannot be messed with. It's a line that cannot be crossed, and Jason Whitlock needs to check his history books and maybe consider making a retraction.
Yeah,
yes.
Well, let's hold our breath on that too. Let's hold our breath on that, and Holder will change his mind about brainwashing people against the Second Amendment. Costas will turn around. I'm sure Michael Moore will change his mind. I'm sure that let's go down the laundry list. I think we all know what we're dealing with here. It's really a wing of propaganda, and it really has to be called out as such. We're obvious with what our propaganda is: liberty and freedom. Yep, guilty. Absolutely.
I know. Yeah, we're dangerous.
We seek these types of things in conversations, and we expect as much from our paid officials, the people that work for us. We're the boss. We fire them, and there are things. There are protections in case the country starts to slip away into tyranny, and the Second Amendment is one of the biggest things out there. So anytime this conversation comes up, I think it's important that we stop, we kind of hit reset, we pause, we talk about it for a second, and just remember that this is big. You don't have much if you don't have freedom and liberty. But what we don't have much of right now is time. So why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and take a quick station identification break, Blake. And what we'll do is we'll come back on the other side. We'll just touch a couple of top stories. We'll do kind of a top stories extravaganza. And we'll talk about George Zimmerman suing NBC. That's interesting how it comes together. A Telegraph story where the school curriculum is dropping certain books like Catcher in the Rye to add weird things and propaganda. We'll talk about Detroit going bankrupt. We'll talk a little bit more about the fiscal cliff, maybe some Rand Paul, maybe some Obama. Do they really want to avoid it or not? On the other side, my name's Brian. This is thenewamericanmedia.com. On with Blake the Eccentric Wally. You can find him on freedomizerradio.com every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, noon to 1:30 Pacific. We'll be right back. We're going to go through our top story extravaganza on the other side.
Follow thenewamericanmedia.com on Twitter at American_media_.